Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's Christopher with BioBuzz for another episode of What's the Buzz. Super excited today to welcome today's guest, Jesse Christopher, who's CEO and co-founder of Longeviti Neuro Solutions. Jesse, welcome to the show today.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Jesse and I, actually, funny story, we're actually neighbors, so we're both in the same, incubator tech park. So, but we are not in the same location today, ironically. For those of you tuning in, What's the Buzz is our weekly interview series where we interview innovators and ecosystem builders. I think that growing a life science company today probably never been harder, and I think the power of community is important. A lot of people go into what makes a company successful, from investors to ecosystem collaborators, partners, funders, the work. So we'd like to bring them on today. Jesse, I think you wear both hats. I mean, I know you do a lot for the Neurotech, neuroscience community, and of course, you've grown in a very successful company. So excited to dive in here in a little bit.
Yeah, again, thanks. I'm looking forward to diving into it.
So before we jump in, let me just take care of a little housekeeping. First of all, thank you to our sponsor, CRB. So while we talk to ecosystem builders, I always joke that they are the actual ecosystem builder. I don't know if you know them, Jesse, but they are a design, build, construction firm. So they specialize in life sciences. There's a 90% chance if you're driving down the road, whether you're Maryland, Philly, or North Carolina, wherever you're at, you're driving by a manufacturing plant or a lab that they've built. They've been a long-standing partner for us, so if you are looking at a lab expansion or building your next operation, there's probably nobody that knows this industry better than CRB. So
it's one of the best uses of commercial real estate here in the city. So hopefully they're busy.
I think they are, and I think with if you and many others in the industry continue to succeed, I think they'll be busy for quite a while.
Excellent.
Well, good. Well, Jesse, as we get started here today, why don't you give just a personal introduction to yourself and tell us a little bit about Longeviti?
Yeah, well, thanks again, Chris. So Longeviti's, grown certainly out of my garage, but I'm sitting at home today. Thank you, Chris, for saving the commute. It's been a busy year. I sit here 9 years after starting this company in my garage. I was inspired, having run essentially the Mid-Atlantic for a major company, Stryker, which is a great company. From top to bottom, from leadership to products, and they appreciate their shareholders. I learned a lot of my best practices that we've incorporated here at Longeviti, which frankly I attribute a lot of our culture, success, and accountability, and frankly productivity to what we learned there and with some other companies that our leadership came from. But I digress. So my job at Stryker was from rep to manager over a period of 10 years, and I got to walk into operating rooms and help physicians reconstruct faces here in shock trauma, whether somebody got in a car accident or a ballistic injury, or across town to Johns Hopkins, where they're removing a brain tumor or working on maybe hydrocephalus. And it was really a remarkable tale of two cities. Not every city has that experience where you've got real world leaders in both 4 miles away from each other. For those who don't know, shock trauma is the first park center trauma center like it. A team came back from Vietnam and realized that helicopters and time is tissue and all these things could really matter and save lives. So we started shock trauma. And then similarly, depending on who you talk to, Harvard or Hopkins, brain surgery started here in Baltimore. And so we need to take a lot of pride in that. We need to own it. I spend my spare time, talking about that, how lucky we are. But, Johns Hopkins started neurosurgery with, Harvey Cushing, a little over 100 years ago or so. And so there's great history here. So for anybody who is wondering why Baltimore has such prowess in healthcare systems, it's really anchored by these two facilities. So the University of Maryland, shock trauma, and Johns Hopkins. So, as an industry player, kind of, in operating rooms, learning to do well in my job, it was essentially sales. You have to understand why. Why is a surgeon or a physician using something for some procedure? And in our instance, it was from the neck up reconstruction. So why would you use titanium versus cement versus plastic in which area and under what pathology? fast forward to a really, satisfying career, and I learned a lot. I saw thousands of cases, and I'm not alone. A lot of our leadership team here at Longevity has been in the same boat. But you learn that the rate limiter to innovation is not just somebody having a brilliant idea. It's not Chris with all your brilliant ideas being held back. It's that, historically, neurosurgery and other disciplines have been siloed by a number of reasons, from politics to liabilities to, economics. And so that was probably one of the first hurdles to overcome if we really were going to move the needle in innovating neurosurgery. The other is, frankly, finding a good business model. What's worth investing in to design lock and trusting $100 million in investment to come out the other side with a PMA that you can sell for neurosurgery and it's still relevant. And so, what happened was I was watching a TED Talk, and it was really remarkable. The fact is 1 in 5 of us is going to have a neurological disorder. And it hit me between the eyes that, my future was pretty well written. I was having a great career at Stryker. I would probably retire rich on Stryker stock, but, I wouldn't be able to save one of my loved ones. I've got 3 daughters and a wife, from some affliction if it's neurological. And I didn't want that to be the Greek tragedy, right? So I realized that, in reconstructing for neurosurgery, we were selling pieces of titanium and plastic for thousands of dollars, and they were inert. They were only there to reconstruct, and then your skin and hair grows over and you theoretically look normal. At the same time we were doing that, I was buying a cell phone that was as thin as a cranium, 4 or 5 millimeters thick. It had more processing power than the space shuttle, and they're pretty damn hard. And so, why isn't somebody looking to add this, function to these, reconstructive implants was the main question that I couldn't shake, especially in this day and age, 10 years ago, the Internet of Things. So, understanding my obligations as an employee and in my responsibilities as a father, I asked my wife if I could quit my job cold turkey. I still don't know why she said yes, but that started it. That was really the spark. From then on, I was very motivated to prove out this concept of, can we hermetically seal function that actually serves a purpose, not just looks cool and we can put on our website. Does this actually ever get to market, generate revenue because it's a capitalistic solve for some problem? And that's the driving factor behind Longevity. So I know I've been talking a lot, but that's what put me in my garage, and I'm happy to say that it has certainly paid off, for the risks that we've taken.
Yeah, it's incredible. I my son's really big into Marvel right now, so I love the origin story, right? I think the origin story is so important to an entrepreneurial journey.
I'll never forget. I was in the shower and I was talking to my wife, Megan, saying, I think I should quit my job. I feel like, uniquely positioned, not the smartest or the best at anything, but I'm uniquely positioned with my background and the people that I've, gained trust with to maybe be able to make a difference here with the right team. And she's like, stop talking about it. Just be about it. That's actually a phrase from Rodney Taylor. So give a shout out to him here. Drama.
That's great advice. So your product, let's dive into your product a little bit. So your product is a cranial implant. Is that right? Is that the,
so Longevity, you got it. So Longevity has launched 2 essential platforms. One is the InvisiShunt platform, and think of that as a cell phone case for other products to market. You're reconstructing a hole, but that hole has to house something. And so that you need that shape to hold it. The bigger platform, which we're really excited about, has been the ClearFit platform. That not only reconstructs your cranium whenever a hole, big or small, needs to be made for a tumor, but afterwards you're allowed to pass ultrasound signals through it. And that has been a game changer, because ultrasound plus AI plus ClearFit enables you and I or anybody to image a brain anywhere in the world. And we've been doing in-services from Central Park and in the mountains, or we just did into the trade floor in LA. And patients are really thrilled. So, you no longer need, with the ClearFit platform, to have to go into a CT or an MRI to look at brains. You can quite literally take a transducer the size of your phone out of your pocket, pull up your app, and look at your brain while you're holding the transducer on your head if you're a patient, and see your brain not only in real time, but see it move. And for all the reasons this is important, right? Never in the history of humanity has the speed of information lost a race, right? And so now we're offering a lot of information instantly that has never been accessible in this way before. It's great, but it's also overwhelming because we're playing some catch up. So to backtrack, a lot of procedures are open when you're having neurological disorder, and that means you're going in for surgery. There's about 300,000 a year. for those procedures, if you're making a hole or quote a window in someone's cranium, leave one of our clear fits behind. And that enables us to not only give you information today, but upgrade externally quarterly or daily or monthly, as opposed to originally when we set out for longevity, we thought we would have to encapsulate all the processing technology we would need to help move the needle within the implant. And that thinking is still where a lot of companies are. And it's a huge rate limiter for the thing I said at the top. You got to think about 10 years and $100 million for a product to get through a PMA process, if you're lucky. And then you got to hope that design lock that you had 10 years prior is still relevant 10 years later. Whereas now we can allow a ton of ones and zeros through the ClearFit window, through your hair and skin, so you look normal. I don't want any listener thinking you're walking around with holes in your head. You look completely normal. You just put your transducer on your head, and not only can you get, again, the ones and zeros and things today, but we can upgrade this constantly. So think about what we can show you today. And so we just made a deal with Clarius, and we launched an application where if you've never been trained in ultrasound, but you've seen it, whether you're a parent or just seen it on TV, it's black and white, it's moving. If you're trained, it's great because you can orient yourself. If you're not trained, all bets are off. AI is here right on time to say, don't worry about it. This blue shape, that's your left ventricle. This other blue shape is your right ventricle. This red line is your midline. This over here is CSF fluid. This is the skull base, and all these things are instantly labeled the second that you put a transducer on. And that's really kind of the game-changing moment that we've been waiting for longevity. Is we've known that enabling access to the ones and zeros of the brain was going to be insanely valuable to the patients most of all, but also the caretakers. We didn't anticipate how quickly AI would help us move this forward. And so again, we're very excited now because with this platform of the ClearFit, we can partner with GE and Clarius and others and continuously upgrading the information you're getting. And teaser, around the corner, there's therapies that you can do through these windows too. But I'll shut up. I've been talking for a while.
That's wild, Jess. I mean, you've got my brain racing. So if I want to recap some of what I was hearing. So now with ClearFit, you have a platform that whether you're a user at home or like a at home patient, you can kind of do a checkup and be like, hey,
think about a parent who has a kid with hydrocephalus who doesn't want to go into the ER. Theoretically, yes, they could buy a Clarius for $1,000 and send their images to their physician. Or in the future, we could have those patients take them home. Sorry, I think I interrupted.
No, I'm just trying to understand some of what this opens up. Or they can go into an outpatient clinic and they can do an ultrasound scan, and they can send that data to their neurologist or whoever, and it changes the care, the care cycle.
You got it. And that's where we are today. Right now, the early adopters are helping prove this out, especially with AI, that, hey, with or without AI, there's value proposition to the global period after surgery in the ICU, especially those patients that are high risk. You don't want to move them around because there's a 25% incidence chance of adverse event with patient transport. I don't want to get down a rabbit hole, but that's very important and costly. Secondarily, a lot of the images that you move patients around for, CTs in particular, are, I want to say 96 to 98% non-actionable. So think about it. You're taking 3 people off of the floor in an ICU to get somebody to shove them into a tube, often having to sedate them because they're a neurosurgical patient. You radiate them for 30 minutes, pull them out of their tube, you put them back on their bed, you wheel them upstairs. It's a huge workflow, all to 96 to 98% of the time not have anything to do, but you still radiated the patient. Some of these patients, they're having 6 to 10 or more CT scans per visit. On the flip side, now we're starting to see publications, a year or two after we've launched this platform, where it seems overwhelmingly justifiable on why you might be able to skip some CT scans. And we need to be careful as a company, not saying, don't use CT or MRI, but our physicians are teaching each other. This is when we feel responsible to make decisions based off this image.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful.
I think
one other stakeholder scenario after that global period, these patients with, tumor recurrence, chances for life, or hydrocephalus have to come back in. And one of the things we've heard already from early patients is, look, one of the biggest anxiety moments is when we go in, I've got to take a day off work, I go in and get scanned, but even then I don't get any information. I've got to then take another day and set an appointment with my physician, the neurosurgeon, and then they can tell me what they've heard from the radiologist. Whereas now I'm going in and instantly I'm talking with our neurosurgeon and we're both looking at the brain. There's just not a lot of guesswork. And yeah, sometimes that results in further on information, but That's been a game changer because after the glow period, the neurosurgical clinics haven't had an imaging, modality available to them that's economic. But again, I'll stop.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're opening up new patient care possibilities, diagnostic opportunities to identify things that were previously harder to diagnose. So again, I think thinking about it more than a cranial implant, but a true platform is really interesting to think about as like again, I go downstream like Cyborg Nation, right, where we're like I mean, that's where I'm a big sci-fi guy, so that's where I go. But in essence, that's what you're doing. You're interfacing an interface where you can get the data in and out, or that is giving the and again, at some point it might interact with your Apple Watch, right?
Well,
like
if you want to geek out, think about this. So, what we're talking about today, the practical business is helping patients care today because of what we have already out. You can image with the Clarius app and a transducer. This is all standard of care everywhere except for neuro, but they're catching up because the skull has, for your listeners, the skull blocks ultrasound, if we didn't say that before. That's why this has kind of been very innovative and revolutionary, is that we can now use ultrasound, which is the gold standard for every other organ for tertiary care for neuro. But if you want to geek out, so don't just think about ultrasound as the grainy black and white or even the cool, labeled images that we can show with AI. Charles Liu, a neurosurgeon out at USC, and we're excited to be working with the Big Ten as a whole, made the cover of Science last year, translational medicine, because if you ratchet up ultrasound, which is just an energy frequency, you can get 5 to 10 times the resolution as functional MRI. And it's moving, right? So the implications are profound. So what he did was use one of our implants because of a patient who had paralysis, motor issues. He reconstructed their skull, but during COVID, he was able to map their brain with ultra-fast functional ultrasound. So ultrasound essentially hears the precise moment a neuron fires because there's a capillary corollary. So it ejects blood, right, for your listeners, like instantly when it also senses electrical response. What does that mean? It means there's an ultrasound corollary for brain function. So what Charles and USC did was, over this guy's skin, he just put a transducer on, a high-tech one, and he could map this guy's motor function while he's playing guitar up to 8 different motor movements. And so to your point earlier, it's tough as a CEO, innovator, because, I'm constantly straddling what can we do around the corner with what's responsible for our shareholders today.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about the future, I don't see a limit to how the resolution and how good ultrasound can get, based on the fact that already today it can show you an individual neuron. I feel like the upgrades externally, vastly trump what we could possibly do with implantables. But we still do work on implantable, things.
Well, let's pivot a little bit from sci-fi future to like longevity future. So tell us, like, what are some things that are happening in the company now? I saw that you've recently brought on some additional leadership. You had some capital infusion. I know locally you got some exciting things happening here in the peninsula. Talk to us a little bit about what is happening in longevity today and kind of what you're excited about.
Everything's coming together right on time. It has not been easy, so don't let me fool any of your listeners. None of this is easy. If you're crazy enough to quit your job, don't think it's going to happen overnight. It certainly didn't just unfold for us. But after staying in touch with Tim Scannell, the former president of Stryker, and kind of hitting the right moment here with what you said, our headquarters in Baltimore on the peninsula, we hosted him. We've hosted some other VIPs, and it's working, right? So the success of the company is working with what the city is building, with the need of, kind of what commercial real estate is looking for right now. So all these variables are coming together to be able to show people what we're building in person, and then to convince them that not only are we doing it, but we're part of a nucleus down here in Port Covington, and it's worth visiting, building around, and it's not going anywhere. It seems like there's a real gravity, a critical mass now. And so I'm going to address each one of those. So, starting with him, he's, Stryker is the best of the best in terms of med tech. We had to hit a certain revenue threshold and kind of traction to be able to attract, talent like him, but he's been a godsend. He's come onto the board to help the company through this growth phase. And so I'll address the raise. We, with our business model, qualified for debt over the last year or so, which means, the business is working. Our margins are good. Our sales reps are paying for themselves. Our products are viable out in the market. We currently now have thousands of patients in the US walking around ultrasound enabled. And so we really need to build an infrastructure to keep growing. That's where this debt came into play. So when I say I wear two hats, where Longeviti is going is, one, we're taking the products we have to market right now and we're scaling. That's what our lenders want us to do. And we see the roadmap clear as day. In the background, we know that there's some very exciting things that we can also develop. And so that's probably going to come in the form of, additional fundraising, or maybe some of the stakeholder relationships that we have here regionally and, with some of the bigs nationally. That's developing as we speak. I think hopefully both of those coalesce, and, Longeviti keeping a footprint here long term. We are having a lot of success, sharing the vision of where Baltimore and Longeviti and Neurotech Harbor all fit, and trying to show people that, look, just like Silicon Valley, 50 years ago, neuroscience is of insane value to all of us. We all have a brain. And if you want to quantify the value of your brain, I try this sometimes with some of our investors. Look, the most valuable thing that you can hold that's not radioactive is diamonds. If you want to hold a pound of diamonds, ask Google. It's about $9.5 million a pound. I couldn't give you $9.5 million for a pound of your brain, probably. So, okay, let's rethink how valuable that is. Now, let's think about when we are. We're all sharing the generations that we are, these three overlapping generations. The only time and the first time we're ever going to decode the most valuable thing to humanity. Come on, who doesn't want to be a part of that? And why don't we have a hub that galvanizes the strengths that we need, which are healthcare acumen? How do we do this responsibly? Cyber, how do we protect the ones and zeros we're about to decode? And frankly, regulatorily, we're a stone's throw away from all the patient advocacy groups and policymakers that you ever need access to. So for those reasons, I love where we are in Baltimore, right on the waterfront. Kudos to Kevin Plank, Goldman Sachs, for building it and having the vision. And, for us, we're thrilled that, Maryland, Hopkins, TEDCO, Department of Commerce have all been so supportive. But again, I could go on. So let me.
No, well, I think it's a good. I'm a big advocate for. We're at City Garage now, right? And that's where you are, and you have an expansion happening. But the Baltimore Peninsula is what you're talking about. That was a development project by Kevin Plank. I always talk about this as like the gateway to Baltimore. It's in the south side of the city. It's this community that's being developed and built. And to your point, here at City Garage, we have you all, we have Launchport, which is a med tech accelerator. Blackbird Labs is building a therapeutics accelerator. We have a Quest Diagnostic, a commercial diagnostics company. We got 3 VCs like here on campus. So there's a tremendous amount of kind of activity happening just in this one small and a new. This isn't the legacy university-based innovation. This is a planned innovation community. And I think it's exciting to think about how Neurotech could kind of anchor this. And I think, I don't know, would you say that we're still at the kind of tip of the iceberg or the AOL days of what's possible with Neurotech right now in Baltimore?
Absolutely. Look, when Elon Musk is getting in, there's something there, right? So the fact that he started Neuralink 3 months after Longeviti, was an eye-opener. We knew we were on the right track. Fortunately, we got to market and we're helping patients from the ground up, and that's kind of our approach. But, it's not going to be that way forever. We're going to create interfaces that are going to make, brain interface a lot, communicating with the brain more accessible for everyone. And there's more ways to do it than just frequencies and electronics. There's obviously, a lot of people working on pharmaceuticals and chemicals, but for all those reasons, that's why it's important to point out what you mentioned. There's a mindset here that's shifted. We have gone traditionally from relying on grants and NIH to, for better or for worse, very capitalistic thinking. And I think that's right on time. If you look at the state of economics in Maryland and what we need that mind shift. Yeah. And to your point, City Garage has been great, and kudos again to Bob Story and those who helped build the reputation. It's one of the reasons why we went there. And one of the reasons why we want to keep a footprint there, we want as big as we are able to grow, hopefully, we don't want an echo chamber. We don't, we would like for our people and advisors to be able to rub elbows with everyone you just mentioned, because we're all going through slightly different things, but the synergies are what help us step, 3 steps ahead.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we're so passionate about being at BioBuzz, being a community builder and building the ecosystem, is because, again, we were at the TEDCO Expo. You mentioned TEDCO was part of that, that kind of leading edge to the investment and helping companies grow. We were at the Expo yesterday, and I got to interview 16 industry leaders and investors, and in order to be in order to hit that next generation of our commercial industry here, we need the rubbing elbows, we need the collisions, we need the investors that are right alongside, that see that you're getting in the office at 5:30 in the morning and see that there is people that they can invest in here.
You got it. We say trust is production over time. We're earning trust as a kind of a young life science economy, but we've got a deep history. So to your point, we just need a couple of years under our belt to prove out to the investors that, there are more, Longevities and Blackbirds, and Launchports and all the other companies that are there in Launch and City Garage, and there's more coming. And now we've got the formula, so it's worth investing in this eco center.
Yeah, I tagged a handful of them on the LinkedIn post who I know of, but I'm sure you know of a lot more. In that vein, Jesse, you mentioned Neurotech Harbor and you mentioned some other things. Could you just high level go over what are a couple of those initiatives that people should know about that are happening here?
Yeah, Neurotech Harbor is great. If you want to look that up, it's a grant program. I think that ties together, I want to say MIT, Hopkins, and Howard. But somebody find Bob Story's email and ask him about that.
We'll tag him on the post.
Behind that, though, I will say Maryland Department of Commerce is probably the most impressive partner that we've had to date. They've been great. They care. That they've got a great team, and that's really all the difference in the world. And really importantly, they have a program called the BITSI. So any company that wants to come and locate in City Garage, that qualifies you in an opportunity zone. Well, in Maryland and across the country, opportunity zones, if you invest in it, certainly through Maryland, you'll get a reimbursement. So for us, historically, when we have qualified for the BITSI, if you invest $100,000 in a company that's in an opportunity zone, you get $50,000 back. That's either a credit or a check from the state. It seems too good to be true. It's just a real big pain in the butt. But if you're willing to do that, it isn't. It's true, and it's very effective. The downside, it's capped at, I think, $4 or $5 million. So it really is for startups. It really is for startups that have good ideas that people want to get in, and maybe that's a de-risking mechanism. There's also a life science kicker there too. So if you're a biotechnology qualified company and in an opportunity zone, there's even more reimbursement back. Why is that such a great program, and why am I bringing it up? It's awesome for anybody who wants to start off, but you got to get ahead of it and apply, know it, and find people that have done it before. SC&H is a firm that we've used very successfully. Ekfora is a great VC that is, frankly, cut their teeth on the BITSI. Together, we're advocating to the state, look, this has been effective. We're living proof. Let's think about this for growth level companies. The kicker, their commitment for the BITSI, if you qualify, is they want you to stay here for 3 years. Well, maybe we think about as a state creating, more funds that are matched by VCs and big finance that are already located here, headquartered here, for the commitment of, hey, we'll be here for 10 years and we'll stay in Port Covington or whatever. When I'm not working full-time at Longevity, that's what I'm spending my part-time, in the ear of people trying to convince them to listen to.
I appreciate you taking up that sword, Jesse, because it's important. You mentioned, I think it was brought up earlier, in the state of the market is tough right now, right? So, we've seen grants decrease at the federal level, and I would say innovation hasn't stopped, and there's still people that are quitting their job to start something because you're doing it because you're passionate about it. You want to see patient, health improvement. There's a lot of reasons why people are doing it, or they know they have the next thing. So the Bitsy's a great, there's actually an Itsy too, an Itsy and a Bitsy.
Oh, wow. Okay. Look at that. I'm going to go apply for it right now. No, I'm just kidding.
So the Itsy is for IT companies. So if you have an algorithm that maybe Jesse could use at one point, you can apply for an Itsy and build a neuralistic network or an algorithm that they can use for that and qualify.
But that's a great point. I mean, as we get into the AI, processing of the images we're getting, that's our next platform. And I'm glad on this live podcast you've inspired us to go and look up one of these programs.
Yeah, there you go. That's why we do it, right? That's why these like community elements, and that's why the City Garage is great, because half the time you need to be sitting next to someone in a different field for that spark to happen. I mean, it's happened to me a dozen times where you're sitting there and like, I had no idea that was even a thing. I have something for that.
Well said.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the magic that I think the Baltimore Peninsula, in Baltimore, in this Neurotech ecosystem we're hoping to build, and I know that you're a leading voice and a leading company in forging that path. So again, I've known this for a while.
Yeah, we're using our strengths. We're picking people up from the Four Seasons or the Pendry by boat. We're taking them to the the peninsula. We're driving them on golf carts right into a City Garage. We're giving the whole feel, but at the same time, we're in their ear. Look, isn't this cool? Look what Under Armour's building, and look who else is here. It seems to be working. So knock on wood. Hopefully, we can continue to build a critical mass together.
Yeah. Well, again, like I said in the very beginning, like we want to talk to innovators and ecosystem builders, and a lot of times they're the same, right? I think when you're building a company, like you can't help but look outside your company walls and say, hey, am I building something sustainable? Am I building in the right community? What's around me that I'm impacting my shareholders? So I appreciate everything you're doing, outside the Longeviti walls and kind of fostering. It's exciting, man. I'm like, I've even before this, I started looking up the neuroscience companies and tech companies in Baltimore, and there's probably another 10 that I didn't know about until just last night when I was, kind of prepping for our conversation today.
Yeah, it's an exciting time and right on time. So, we appreciate, BioBuzz, being some of the cement that binds, and feel free to host a happy hour for all of us.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you walk by, Jesse, my office in City Garage has these two windows. So Jesse and I were talking. He's like, I got like the press box here that looks out and everything. So
I love it. You get almost live, and here comes no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, real-time live call as Bob Story walks through the building. Well, hey, Jesse, thank you. Any closing thoughts that you want to share about Longeviti, about how, anybody that you're looking to connect with in this next phase of growth that you want to reach out?
I would say stay positive. Nobody wants to hear about your problems, but rephrase those to your advisors as how would they advise you? Stay positive, though. No matter how hard it gets, it's going to be really difficult. You're going to experience every emotion for all those new innovators out there, or new CEOs or entrepreneurs. More importantly than keeping your positivity, is who you're picking for your advisors. Make sure that you're selecting people that have had success as you define it. I defined it early on as who has exited, not just raised money. If you raise money and lose it, I don't really want to learn from you as much as I want to learn from the guy who did it and won. Better than that is the guy or the woman who's done both. Experience is the name we give our mistakes. I'm very experienced at this point. Don't be afraid of your mistakes. So anyway, I'm sure I got plenty more advice for any young entrepreneurs, but I really appreciate you giving us a voice here.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jesse, for sharing everything you're doing. And it's a really exciting journey. And I think, I'm going to do some more digging around on everything you're building and think more about like the cyborgs of the future that Longeviti will be powering.
Fair enough. Yeah. And maybe in the next one, I'll talk about where I think we'll, retire, either in space or in the oceans.
Yeah. Either one would be pretty cool. I'll make sure I grab some stuff from your team to put into the show notes here today, so that people can kind of see a little bit about what you're building and doing.
Awesome. We'll do.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining today. Really appreciate it. These are exciting conversations for me to have, because I'm always learning, and I get to help showcase the exciting things that I know are happening around the ecosystems we're in. So please tune in next time. We've got a lot of exciting guests coming up. I know one big thing that is in the life sciences biopharma space is JP Morgan's event in January. So we have a guest coming up talking a little bit about about the JP Morgan event. If anybody's watching that will be in DC on Friday, BioBuzz is hosting DC Startup Week, the life sciences track. So we've got an AI panel and an investor panel in the afternoon. We might have a few tickets left for a VIP session in the morning where we got some TED Talks we put together, really for like an inspiration on like what's the future of life sciences. I'm really regretting not having a neurotech element to that now, but maybe next year or next time we do it.
Spend $1 trillion a year in the United States on neuro disorders. Just plugging that out there. It's big business.
It is. All right, so we got to table that for next one. We'll get you into the TED Talk next time. I'm sure you were inspired by one. I'm sure you're ready to inspire the next generation. So, well, with that, thank you all. Appreciate you tuning in to What's the Buzz, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, Chris.